It's the episode you've been waiting for, embarrassing voiceover stories. But before we get into that, I'd like to set the stage with a quote. As a voiceover talent, you know you own your own business. And if you're serious about it, you look to grow that business, and it can be stressful. And this quote from Mark Andreessen may explain why there's a bit of, shall we say, air that's involved in my story, and I'll share that at the very end to wrap up all the tales of unsettling, embarrassing voiceover woes. But I think what Mark said about running your own business and starting out, well, see if this applies to you. He said, "The best thing about startups is you only ever experience two emotions, euphoria and terror. And I find that lack of sleep enhances both of them." If you've been a voiceover talent for any amount of time, you probably have an embarrassing story, and I want you to know that you're not alone. So we asked our instructors or engineers to share their most cringe-worthy times, and hopefully this will bring a smile to your noggin. It's a great reminder that we're all imperfect. We make mistakes, and you just gotta laugh at them. A mess up isn't a life sentence. And honestly, it may even help you realize that we could take things too far in the serious realm. I'll get to my story at the very end, but let's start out with Heidi.
So back in the yonder days of voiceover, when we would just do auditions from home and then we would get booked in an outside studio, I woke up one day, get a call from my agent, and he goes, "Heidi, where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm here at home." He said, "Nope, you should be at the studio." And I was like, shoot, totally forgot to put it on my calendar. It felt so awful. It had been the one time that I had done that. It was supposed to be at 10 o'clock. This was 10:05. And so I said, "All right, don't worry. I'm on my way. Just head out the door with my purse in hand." That's it. I had yoga pants on, no makeup. I'd showered, but just like a sports bra. I was looking rough. And I go outside and I'm like, wait a minute, where's my car? I totally forgot Mike had taken my car, and the only car that was left was his car, which wouldn't have been a big deal, except it's a stick shift, and I can't drive a stick shift. I used to, but I can't anymore. Anyways, that's another story. And I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just watching the minutes go by as I know that my client is there. This was when I was doing a bunch of beauty rest stuff, waiting for me. Okay, so I'm like, think Heidi, called an Uber. Like, great. Uber takes me there. I show up. We made record time through downtown Atlanta. I don't even know how that happened. I was so embarrassed that I had been so late, and I show up just looking a mess. But thankfully, that client had worked with me before, so they knew this was not like a pattern. And my agent forgave me as well. But man, oh man, I felt so awful. And I have not forgotten about a session since then.
Our next story is from Aaron Goodson. Now, Aaron teaches our beginner voiceover intensive class, and he's been busy with a play that he's been in, and Heidi and I actually went to see it recently. Fantastic. So I'm going to have to read his story, but you get to at least see him. He says, "One story that comes to mind is probably my first full-time year in voiceover. I had a closet booth set up in what was our home office, and it shared a wall with the bedroom of my two boys, who were 8 and 9 at the time. This was during the pandemic, and everyone was home during the day. Well, during a commercial recording session, my boys got particularly loud and could be heard over my mic. I muted myself and then screamed from the closet, 'Hey fellas, I'm recording! Quiet, please!' I then heard the producer laugh and say, 'That was hilarious.' I apologized and everyone laughed it off and we continued on, but it definitely made me more cautious about yelling at my kids during sessions. It also made me long for the days when I could upgrade my studio."
All right, so my first paid voiceover session with a real client, I had a different booth at the time, and it was held up with PVC pipes, and it had moving blankets all around, and it had a plywood roof. So I get on the call, I give my first take, I start getting directed, and then the whole right side of my booth just collapsed. They heard it, and they asked if everything was okay, and I played it off, and I said, "Oh, it's okay. My cat just knocked over something outside of the booth." It was not okay. I had to keep the rest of my booth from falling down by holding up the roof with my left hand, and my right hand had a moving blanket kind of like caped around me like I was like a vampire, like concealing my face. And I had to stay like that for the rest of the session so that my sound quality was okay. And they didn't notice.
So my embarrassing, funny, pretty awkward VO story was back in the late aughts, I think, and my manager had gotten me an audition to do a voice match for one of the characters in the movie Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2. Now, the voice match was for one of the dog characters that was originally played by a middle-aged Mexican performer with a definitive Mexican accent. So now remember, this was, before anyone was particularly cognizant or concerned with equity in casting when it came to VO. So I went ahead and did the recorded audition and got an in-person callback at the Disney Studios in Burbank. Now, when I walked into the casting office for the callback, it was just me and 2 other middle-aged Hispanic actors. Now, mind you, there were no headshots submitted for this, so no one had any idea that I was a 30-something white guy. And I swear it was like, the needle was pulled off the record when I came in, and everyone was just looking at me like I was an alien and seemed very confused that I was there for this callback. And even though I nailed the callback, unsurprisingly and thankfully, I did not get the part. Of course, now I wouldn't even accept that audition, but it was quite a funny scene at the time.
Hey, friends. So I've had a few embarrassing things happen to me in my illustrious voiceover career. Besides, like weird mouth noises or tummy rumbles, I've even burped. One time I ended up at the wrong studio for a recurring job. I was like, hey, I'll get my water and I'll be right in. And they were like, you're not in the books today. Call my agent. Well, they did, and I was at the wrong studio. I was supposed to be around the corner, so I had to hightail it out of there. And then another time, I was working with a client in London, and I calculated the time difference incorrectly. So I'm driving to the studio for the job, and the phone rings, and it's London calling, wondering, where are you? Moral of the story, get there a little bit early for your sessions in case there's anything that needs to be ironed out. And then always be prepared for your session so that you can work efficiently. Okay? Love you. Bye.
I got hired by an NBC affiliate in Boston to record the cold open for a show about the Mayflower, I believe. And it was a remote session, so I dialed in from the studio, met everybody, and the client was on. But anyways, there was a couple people, plus the person who booked me and the engineer. They said, okay, we're recutting this voiceover that you did for us already. And I said, oh, okay, great. And, I just figured I can't remember exactly every script. The script was different, but they said they changed it. So I was like, okay, no problem. And they said, okay, we're going to play for you the original recording so you can listen, and match it up, whatever, and kind of see where we were, and we want to make some tweaks and kind of change the energy a little bit. I said, great. So I'm listening, and they play it back, and within, a few seconds, I realized that it was a different voice actor. It wasn't me who voiced the track originally, but my guess is the producer who hired me didn't want to let the client know that they had screwed up, and so they didn't say anything to the client. When I said, well, this isn't me, I'm not sure if you want to get the other actor. And they basically went, no, this is great. No, let's just go ahead and cut it. As far as I know, it never aired, and I have no idea whatever happened because I don't live in Boston, so I don't know whatever happened with it. And the producer never sent me the finished version. So my guess is they paid me and chalked it up to some kind of clerical error that they had gone through and booked the wrong talent. So, yeah, that was fun.
Okay, and last but not least, here is my embarrassing story, which may be probably the most embarrassing story ever, though I know I'm not alone. I know there's somebody else who's dealt with this before. Stress on the word dealt. This was in the days of going to voiceover studios or recording studios. I can't remember which one it was here in Atlanta, but I got to the studio in time, ended up meeting the client, meeting the engineer. The engineer gets me set up in the separate room. He puts, the mic where it's supposed to be for mic placement and whatnot, and I think everything's good to go. We're about to get started. Engineer leaves, he's back in the room. And so I had some stomach issues going on that day, and I'm like, well, I'm the one that's got to deal with this, so I'll just let it go. And it was pretty violent. Let's just go there. Yeah, it was bad. And so I'm like, great, nobody's going to come in here. It'll dissipate by the time, even if anybody has to come in here. Well, within 2 minutes, the engineer said after our level check, he's like, nah, I think I need to move the microphone around a little bit more to get more of your voice. Yeah, that's what I looked like. Panic on the inside. And so he comes in and, We had to acknowledge the situation, let's just say. And quite honestly, at that point, you can't just ignore it. You just got to be like, I am so sorry. I didn't think you'd have to come back in here. And he's like, you know what? It happens. He's had to deal with it from other voiceover talent, so it wasn't the first time. Still, take Beano or any type of stomach stuff that you need to before a session. Just won't ever have to worry about it. And wow. Heidi, did I just overshare? Yeah, I probably did. But I hope that made you smile. If you'd like to get voiceover training from a group of professional and working voiceover talent who are real about the industry, what to expect, place that shares our stories and everything that goes with it, well, check out AtlantaVoiceOverStudio.com or the on-demand classes that we have at ProVoiceOverTraining.com. Our mission is to equip, elevate, and inspire you in your voiceover journey, giving you the resources you need to create the career you want. And when it comes to creating a successful voiceover career, it's not only about voiceover, it's about thinking outside the box. Thanks for watching, and cheers to your voiceover success.